Hello there, this is Al24 World News, and these are your headlines. The work of the 90th session of a Great Algerian-Mauritanian Joint Committee for Cooperation will be held today in the Mauritanian capital, Nouakchott. Brahim Ghali, the president of Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, was among leaders to attend President-elect William Ruto's inauguration. Ukrainian troops have consolidated the gains made in recent days and claim to have recaptured more than 300 towns in the Kharkiv region. Violent protests continue in Haiti's capital on Tuesday as inflation surged to its highest in a decade. Prices in the US remained extremely high in August, even as the overall pace of inflation slowed for the second month in a row and plunging gas prices. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. The work of the 90th session of the Great Algerian-Mauritanian Joint Committee for Cooperation will be held today in the Mauritanian capital, Nouakchott. Algeria Prime Minister Ayman Ben Abdulrahman, who is on a working visit to Mauritania, will co-chair with his Mauritanian counterpart Mohammed Ould Bilal Massoud the work of the session. The two parties had agreed on an executive protocol of the Memorandum of Understanding concluded last December related to the completion of the road linking Tindouf, Algeria, to Mauritania Azouirat, extending over a distance of 773 kilometers. The Algerian-Mauritanian economic cooperation is important for both neighboring countries. Let's follow some key factors making Mauritania as a strategic portal for Algeria to Western Africa. The Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arqab, was received today in Ommani capital, Muscat, as a special envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, by His Highness Sayyid Said bin Tariq, where he handed him the letter addressed by the President of the Republic to his brother, the Sultan of Amman, His Majesty Haytham bin Tariq, to participate in the work of the Arab Summit. The popular dimension in this reform and development of the Joint Arab Action System was the theme of the third session of the Intergenerational Forum to support Joint Arab Action held in Iran, west of Algeria. The third meeting highlighted to the importance of involving civil society in addressing the challenges facing the Arab world.
First, the popular dimension in the reform, development and modernization of the Arab League is important. Second, there has been the establishment of the committee chaired by Algeria since 2013 in the framework of Arab labor reform. We know that a high-level committee was established under the chairmanship of the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lakhdar Ibrahimi.
Brahim Ghali, the president of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, was among leaders to attend President-elect William Ruto's inauguration. Ghali arrived at Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on Tuesday morning, where he was warmly received by officials from the Foreign Office. Kenya is among the 41 UN member states which recognize Sahrawi and has been at the forefront championing for the de-escalation of the conflict between Sahrawi people and Morocco. The head of the Algerian National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, participated on Tuesday in Nairobi, the inauguration ceremony of the new Kenyan President William Ruto, who took the oath, or rather the swear, in the presence of the heads and the representative of many invited countries. According to a statement by the Council, Boughali had been commissioned by President Abdelmajid Tebboune on his behalf to represent Algeria in the inauguration ceremonies of the elected presidents of Kenya and Angola. To a different matter now, 2 Palestinians were killed early this morning by the Zionist gunfire at Jalama checkpoint north of Jenin. The Zionist army said it opened fire at 2 Palestinians near the checkpoint, killing the 2 after they opened fire at soldiers. On the other hand, Palestinian news agency reported that the Zionist forces arrested 7 citizens of Nablus, including 4 siblings. "17 people were injured as a result of an explosion that occurred at a gas station in the city of Subha, southern Libya, but its causes are not yet known. The spokesman for the ambulance and emergency service, Osama Ali, confirmed that the director of the Subha Airport Ambulance Office was injured during his performance of the rescue mission, noting that all the injured were taken to the hospital and that their injuries are moderate. To England now, the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II arrived last evening to London, where thousands of people gathered to pay tribute to the Queen. Until next Monday, the day of the funeral, around 750,000 of people are expected to say a last goodbye to the longest ruling monarch in British history.
It is her last journey. The coffin of Elizabeth II arrived in a rainy evening to London, where a crowd was waiting for her near Buckingham Palace. She was greeted by her son, Charles III, and members of the royal family.
But it was powerful. That's the word I'd use. I'm from London as well, I'm a proper royalist. And I've always loved the Queen and loved the monarchy.
The British capital is able to say a final goodbye to the Queen. From today until next Monday, the day of the national funeral, people will be able to come and pay a last tribute as close as possible to their sovereign. The public is massively expected at Westminster Hall, which is open 24 hours a day. However, this will need patience, with long queues that could stretch for miles.
It feels a privilege. It feels that I wanted to pay my respects. I brought one of my sons down so that he could see it. It's history. It's emotional. It's just what I felt we should do, really.
Many of the people gathered had braved hours of downpour in order to secure a place where they might catch a glimpse of the hearse carrying the late Queen last evening. Among those who were waiting, Glenn stayed from early hours to be able to be among the firsts to see the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II.
Queen Elizabeth II reigned for 70 years. Reign for 24 hours isn't going to be a problem for me, so we didn't even think about it, and it's gone so quickly because of the moment we're in. Very historic, special moment. And it's just nice to be here, and it seems like the right thing to do, being British, and that was my Queen.
and extensive preparations for the Queen's funeral are in full swing. Leaders from around the world will converge on Westminster Abbey. This is expected to create an unprecedented and challenging security situation for the officials in charge.
Prices in the US remained extremely high in August, even as the overall pace of inflation showed for the second month in a row, and plunging gas prices, which make living costs even more difficult for the Americans.
Despite low gas prices, which slowed inflation in the United States, it maintains strong grip on the US economy and remains the biggest challenge for the American government and people due to the ongoing increase of other prices across the country. The jump in core prices, which exclude unstable food and energy costs, reignited concerns that the Federal Reserve will sharply push interest rates and raise the risk of a slump.
So the biggest thing is, though, the rent. We used to have a lower price. Now it's up to like 800 or so. It went up 20%, give or take. So from 600 to 800, that's $200. So it's a big rise. But besides that, I mean, I've been prepared.
The U.S. government said on Tuesday that core prices jumped 6.3% of the year ending in August and 0.6% from July to August. Businesses are still raising prices in response to robust consumer demand. Chairperson Jerome Powell is expected to announce another big increase in the Fed's key rate next week, which will lead to higher costs for consumer and business loans.
Sometimes it's too expensive. It doesn't cover it. What people do is, well, I'm going to trust God and see what's going to happen, and they give it up instead of trying to fight for it. But it's difficult because you go to, right now I went to the dentist about a couple of months ago, and to extract something is like 150. Before it used to be like only 50, 55, maybe 70 at the most.
The rate of inflation is higher than many Americans have ever seen, driving up the cost of utilities, rent, and other living budgets for families. Despite job opportunities, growth, and minimal unemployment, these factors haven't stopped an economic decline.
The stock market doesn't necessarily reflect the state of the economy, as you well know. And the economy's still strong, unemployment's low, jobs are up, manufacturing's good. So I think we're going to be fine.
Economists plan to trail core prices track to get clearer vision on inflation path. They now anticipate that the Fed will increase its benchmark short-term rate, which is now between 2.25% and 2.5% to 4.5% or more, by the beginning of the next year. That would make it considerably harder for the central bank to achieve its goal of a soft landing, whereby it would control inflation without bringing on a recession.
Keir Starmer, the prosecutor whose investigation led to then-President Bill Clinton's impeachment, had died at the age of 76. More recently, he served on the team defending former President Donald Trump from impeachment in 2020. His family said he died at Houston Hospital on Tuesday of complications from surgery.
The constraints about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth.
To Russia, Ukraine, 5 Ukrainian troops have consolidated the gains made in recent days and claim to have recaptured more than 300 towns in the Kharkiv region, raising flags in cities and towns occupied by Russian troops for 6 months. Hassan Berkan.
The war in Ukraine is entering a new phase after the consolidation of a major offensive by the Ukrainian army in recent days, which on Tuesday continued its advances in Kharkiv province in the northeast of the country, raising flags in the towns and villages that were held by the Russians. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, affirmed that the Ukrainian troops have recovered since the beginning of September more than 6,000 square kilometers of the territory occupied by the Russian forces.
As for now, stabilization measures are completed in an area of 4,000 square kilometers, an elaborated area of about the same size where stabilization measures are still ongoing. Remnants of occupation forces and saboteur groups are being uncovered. Collaborators are being arrested. Full security is re-established.
Russia on Tuesday said its army successfully destroyed several Ukrainian arsenals in the past days. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said at a daily briefing on Tuesday that in the past 24 hours, the Russian aerospace forces used high-precision guided weapons to strike Ukrainian targets, while its army aviation and artillery units destroyed 5 Ukrainian arsenals storing rockets and artillery shells.
Russian air, ballistic and artillery forces are carrying out massive strikes against Ukrainian armed forces units in all operational areas.
Ukrainian forces launched their counter-offensive in early September, apparently taking the Russian army by surprise. According to Ukrainian authorities, its soldiers have recaptured important swaths of territory in cities such as Izium, Kupiansk, and Balaklia in the northeast, and some 500 square kilometers in the Kherson region to the south.
In the same line of thought, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has had a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom he has urged to seek a diplomatic solution in the war in Ukraine. Scholz has urged Putin to facilitate a ceasefire in Ukraine and has asked him to withdraw Russian troops from Ukraine, as well as respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of his neighboring country. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has announced that this Wednesday she will travel to Kiev to show the EU support for the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and to guarantee that the country will have unrestricted access to the single European market. Von der Leyen delivered this Wednesday before the European Parliament the annual speech on the State of the Union, which has focused on war and on energy and economic measures to counteract the effects on the European economy.
It is about autocracy against democracy. And I stand here with a conviction that with the necessary courage and with the necessary solidarity, Putin will fail and Ukraine and Europe will prevail. Europe's solidarity with Ukraine will remain unshakable. From day one on, Europe has stood at Ukraine's side with weapons, with funds, with hospitalities for refugees, and with the toughest sanctions the world has ever seen.
The increase in energy bills in Portugal is affecting economy sectors in Portugal, with cost of gas and electricity bills skyrocketing for many companies in the country. This comes as Portugal's Prime Minister António Costa urging Paris to stop blocking the proposed mid-gas gas pipeline across the Pyrenees, noting it would help Central and Eastern Europe for their energy sources. Violent protests continued in Haiti, or in the Haitian capital, on Tuesday as inflation surged to its highest in decade. Chronic gang violence has left much of Haiti territory beyond government reach due to rival gang battles. After a Sunday speech by Prime Minister Ariel Henry, Haitians are now bracing for fuel price hikes amid lack of gasoline and diesel that could force some businesses to close.
Today, once again, the Haitian people are responding to the call to demonstrate and to force the departure of Ariel Henry. The people know that Ariel is not doing anything for us. The people are coming out all at once, blocking and shutting down the country. This is a sign to say to the Prime Minister, as long as he remains at the head of the government, the people will not cease to rise against you.
Jean-Luc Godard, the French-Swiss director, who was a key figure in the Nouvelle Vague, the film-making movement that revolutionized cinema in the late of 1950s and 60s, has died aged 91 in his home in Switzerland. Zahra Frujani.
La mesure de l'amour, c'est aimer sans mesure.
Jean-Luc Godard, one of the most influential directors in the history of cinema, died on Tuesday, aged 91. The French-Swiss filmmaker found fame in the late 1950s as one of the leading figures in the French movement known as the New Wave, going on to direct dozens of films in a career that lasted more than half a century.
He represented something very important in my youth, and they were very important films. It was such an era. I was in my 20s.
With the news of this sudden death, French President Emmanuel Macron tweeted that France had lost a national treasure. French directors in Paris expressed the tragic loss that faced the 21st century cinema.
What he represents for me is above all this shock of discovery in the first cinema encounters in theaters. After here, more specifically in the Latin Quarter, Godard is one of the rare filmmakers we program and reprogram.
Godard's movies broke with the established conventions of French cinema in 1960 and helped kickstart a new way of filmmaking, complete with handheld camera work, jump cuts, and existential dialogue. For many movie admirers, no words are good enough to describe the icon. Godard, with his tousled black hair and heavy-rimmed glasses, was an absolute revolutionary who made artists of movie makers, putting them on an equivalence with master painters and icons of literature.
Fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan on Monday night killed almost 100 soldiers. Azerbaijani forces shelled Armenian territory in a large-scale attack that killed at least 49 Armenian soldiers and fueled fears of even border hostilities, according to officials. More.
Armenia and Azerbaijan, neighboring former Soviet states, blamed each other for the renewed fighting, which began overnight at several points along their borders, raising fears of another major armed conflict while Russia's military is tied up in Ukraine.
It was observed that Armenia concentrated offensive weapons, heavy artillery, and military personnel along the borders of Azerbaijan. All these facts once again demonstrate that Armenia is preparing for a large-scale military provocation.
Azerbaijan is trying to claim that these actions came as a response to some kind of provocations by the Armenian side, but we can definitely state that this information is absolutely false and has nothing to do with the reality.
The neighboring countries have fought 2 wars and seen regular smaller clashes span 3 decades. Both Russia and the United States called on Baku and Yerevan to observe restraint. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday he was concerned that Russia could try to steer the pot in the conflict between the 2 countries.
Well, always concerns, because whether Russia tries in some fashion to stir the pot to create a distraction from Ukraine is something that we're always concerned about.
The Office of the UN Secretary General urged in a daily briefing for immediate steps to de-escalate tensions.
The Secretary General is deeply concerned about reports of renewed fighting along the Armenia-Azerbaijani border. He calls on the sides to take immediate steps to de-escalate tensions.
Turkey, which neighbors both countries, but it is a close ally for Azerbaijan, said it will continue to stand by Azerbaijan.
We stand by beloved Azerbaijan. We say it once again. Beloved Azerbaijan is not alone.
At the core of the dispute of both countries is the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. It is, according to internationally recognized borders, firmly a part of Azerbaijan, but is populated by ethnic Armenians. Both countries were part of the Soviet Union before its dissolution at the end of 1991. The dispute has led to full-scale war in the 1980s and 1990s, a 6-week war in 2020, and continuing clashes for decades.
Xi Jinping, Chinese president, is on a visit to Central Asia for the first time since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Chinese leader has returned to the world stage amid increased friction with the West. Xi Jinping arrived to Kazakhstan for a state visit and will travel to Uzbekistan for a regional summit where he will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our pages as it is shown in the screen. Bye bye.